LBC's Theo Ashwood.
In other news, shooting at the White House.
There was a shooting outside of the White House. Seems to be very well under control. I'd like to thank the Secret Service for doing always quick and very effective work.
A hell of a farce over A-level exam results. Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland.
Coming back in these circumstances is going to be anxious, and I understand that, and I think it would be wrong to expect otherwise.
And McDonald's, how about this for a Big Mac? McDonald's to sue their former boss for $40 million over allegations of sexual misconduct. Those stories, fries with that? Those stories and more after the 7 o'clock news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock. Scottish students are returning to school today as part of a phased reopening across the country. They'll be the first in the UK to fully return, and safety measures such as social distancing have been put in place. Nicole Wiley is a newly qualified teacher from Inverclyde. She's expecting lessons to look quite different.
Children don't need to social distance, but staff do, so we always need to keep a 2 metre distance, and also need to keep that distance from the children. I think that'll be quite a challenge as well, because, you know, it's human nature to go versus children all the time, so that'll be quite hard.
Universities are being asked to hold places for students challenging their A-level grades. Results based on teachers' predictions are due out on Thursday. There are concerns many students could miss out on their first choice if those marks are downgraded. British and French immigration officials will meet today to address the increasing number of channel crossings. Almost 600 people have attempted to reach the UK on boats in the last few days. The Royal Navy and RAF have been helping patrol the waters. Claire Mosley from the charity Care for Calais says more compassion is needed.
What often gets forgotten is that they are refugees. They're coming from the most dangerous countries in the world. It's well documented. People here come from Syria, Sudan, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iran.
Donald Trump's been escorted out of a news briefing after a shooting near the White House. He was interrupted mid-sentence by a Secret Service agent. The president returned 9 minutes later to tell reporters that a suspect had been shot by officers. Parts of the north of England and Scotland are braced for more thunderstorms in the wake of the heat wave. The Met Office has warned flash flooding could cause travel disruption and power cuts. In Wales, cars have been submerged by floodwater in Aberystwyth. Tom Kendall lives in the town.
Some of the businesses along the street got flooded, and many of the basement flats as well. It wasn't nice to see, because some of the businesses are only just reopened, and to have more issues, more worries about flooding is something that we didn't expect.
More than 1,000 venues, including the Tate Modern and the O2 Arena, will be lit up in red tonight. It's to draw attention to the struggles of the events industry. Organisers predict more than 1 million professionals are at risk of losing their jobs due to the pandemic. In the city, the FTSE 100 will reopen at 60.50 after closing up 18 points yesterday. The pound buys $1.30 and €1.11. The weather, heavy rain and thunderstorms moving north across parts of Scotland this morning. Scattered thundery showers elsewhere, but lots of sunny spells too. Very hot again in the southeast, a high of 34 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Holly Harris.
Lose yourself in the latest and best blockbusters on Now TV. Hunt down vengeful enemies with Gemini Man. Confront your darkest fears in It Chapter 2. And journey with extraordinary heroes in Frozen 2, Angry Birds Movie 2, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Stream all these and more with a 7-day free trial. Only on Now TV. 18 plus UK only. New cinema customers only. Pass auto renews at $11.99 a month unless cancelled. Terms apply.
Tuesday, August the 11th. Within minutes we will have those jobs figures you heard the political editor mention, and we'll give you a full breakdown on that. It is not going to be good. That is one thing. So one person who's lost his job as the chief executive of McDonald's. Now McDonald's, the hamburger firm, are suing him for some £40 million of extraordinary allegations of the number of relationships he was allegedly involved in. We'll give you details on that story as well. Nicola Sturgeon has the good grace to apologise for the appalling way in which the Scottish executive have tried to handle the A-level results system north of the border. Remember, it's results day here in England on Thursday. Boris Johnson.
There's some anxiety about what grades pupils are going to get. We'll do our best to ensure that the hard work of pupils is properly reflected.
Staying with the Prime Minister, he wants a change of law to try and tackle the migrant crossing issue, but a little bit hazy on precise detail. We'll look at that in some more detail, try and boil down exactly where it might go. Now, the contract tracers will knock on the doors. The whole system, remember, is meant to be a world beater, is overhauled as call centres reach fewer than half of people at risk, and extraordinary scenes at a supermarket in South London.
Yes, wearing a mask because they tell you to wear a mask. You don't need to hate us.
Hell on earth.
You don't need to hate us, guys, please.
Hell on earth, mate. Hell on earth.
Yes, anti-mask mob mocks shoppers in a Morrison's who are merely abiding by the law. Were you there? And we'll look at this growing feeling that, in fact, we shouldn't be wearing those face coverings.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Let's get straight then to those employment figures, or more importantly, possibly unemployment figures. I need to remind you, in March, prior to lockdown, remember, full lockdown came in as of March 23. We're looking at approximately 1.35 million people who were unemployed in the United Kingdom, and economists and experts in the field will tell you, given the size of the country, the size of the economy, the size of the working population, that was realistically about as good as it could get. It was an impressive set of figures. But we all know what's happened since March 23rd. We've had month after month after month of COVID-19. What does that impact had? As LBC's political editor here, figures I know dropping within the last 120 seconds. So what you got?
Figures from the Office for National Statistics show that early indicators from July this year show that the number of employees on UK payroll is down 730,000 compared with March this year. The survey data shows that employment is weakening and unemployment is largely unchanged because of increases in economic inactivity with people out of work but not currently looking for work. So what they're taking into account there is the furlough scheme. The decrease in employment, this is the crucial bit, on the quarter was the largest quarterly decrease since May to July 2009, with both men and women seeing decreases on the quarter. So what the Office for National Statistics is saying is that economic activity is up now 20.4%, and that is happening because of the furlough scheme. So of course there's a big question about what happens when furlough comes to an end in October. And the latest predictions are reading 1 in 3 firms expecting that they will have to lay off workers by the end of September. That's the deadline for companies who take the view it's no longer viable to keep their employees on after the furlough scheme ends on October the 31st. Manufacturing, construction and IT are expected to be hardest hit, according to the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. Last week, Chancellor Rishi Sunak told this programme that the economic future of the country was not optimistic.
The Bank of England improved their outlook for the economy compared to the last time they did that, which is obviously welcome news. But I think we need to have some humility about the situation, given we're living at a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty. So our ability to be precise about the exact path of the economy, I think is probably more limited than it normally is.
The government has introduced a £1,000 bonus for each worker. Companies keep on until January, but according to this latest survey, 33% of firms are still planning redundancies by the end of September, up from 22% at the end of the last quarter. And importantly, Nick, this week we're expected to enter the first recession for the first time since 2008, when we get the GDP figures. Meanwhile, the former Chancellor Ken Clarke warned yesterday unemployment could hit 3 million.
As the furlough scheme ends, as it must, I think we're going to see unemployment. I think most people think it would come to at least 2 million. But if we're lucky, it won't get back to the 3 million that we've seen at the worst times in my career. Within that, of course, a lot of disasters for individual businesses, a lot of disasters for individual families.
Ken Clarke concluding Theo Ashworth's report. Right, let's get some detail on what this means for you. 8 minutes after 7, Andrew Sentence is senior business economist and served on the Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, for the Bank of England, and joins me now. Ken Clarke, they're talking about possibly getting to 3 million, and it's a result if it stays around 2 something. Where would you be on that, Mr. Sentence? Good morning.
Well, I think Ken Clarke summed it up pretty well. I think if you look at the fall in the number of people on payrolls, unemployment is inevitably going to go up above 2 million.
people is obviously absolutely crucial to what happens to these unemployment numbers over the next few months.
Why? Break that down for the listener, if you would, Andrew.
Well, that 7.5 million is somewhere between 20 and 25% of the total workforce, so it's a very large number. If those people return temporarily away from work, return to work, or find some alternative work, that's going to limit the rise in unemployment. There's a very large number, and therefore, if a substantial proportion of them don't return to work and end up unemployed, those unemployment numbers are going to go up much more sharply.
Is it a reality to say, in your view, that in some instances the furlough scheme, which seems to have attracted universal support, please tell me if you don't agree, but in some instances that's just delaying the inevitable for some poor souls? They're losing their jobs, they just don't know it yet.
The furlough scheme was necessary when the economy was in lockdown, and the question is, as the economy returns to, I wouldn't say normal way of operating, but a more normal way of operating, as most of the sectors in the economy open up, hopefully people don't need to be on furlough. But we don't really know over the next few months exactly how that's going to pan out. We've had these local lockdowns imposed. There's quite a bit of nervousness among consumers about getting out there into restaurants and pubs, etc. So I think it's going to be a crucial few months for the economy.
Good speaking with you. Thank you for your time, Andrew Sentence. You were on the MPC Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England. You're a senior business economist. It's 11 after 7. Listening to that is Linda Yu, who's a fellow in economics at St Edmund Hall at Oxford University, professor of economics at London Business School, and also wrote the book The Great Economists, and now joins me. Professor, what do you think, just coming back to the furlough scheme, again, when this comes to an end in the next couple of months, what will the impact be there, do you imagine? Good morning to you.
Good morning. I think the impact is likely to be an increase in unemployment, unfortunately. If you look at the latest Bank of England estimates, and there are, of course, also private estimates by banks and others, the expectation is that we go from the unemployment rate, which is still around 3.9% right now, but remember that's only covering up until June. So by the end of the year, when the furlough scheme comes to an end in October, the estimate is we could have another million people who are out of work. So about 2.5 million by year's end, which is 7.5% unemployment by the end of 2020, which is what the Bank of England estimates, and only a gradual decrease from that level throughout 2021.
Is it your view we're only in the opening skirmishes of this economic conflict?
Yes, unfortunately, and it's very worrying because about a quarter of people, and actually over 9 million people, 9.2 million, are estimated to have taken part in the furlough scheme in total. In other words, at some point, and that's over a quarter of the people who are working in the country, which means if you look at the need to support the recovery, this is one of the biggest debates I'm sure we're going to be having in the coming months to prevent the COVID pandemic from permanently affecting our growth potential. It will require keeping people in work, in self-employment, attached to their employers. What I think a lot of employers are worried about is they just don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. They don't know what level of business they're going to be able to sustain. So I think this worrying position, we're not alone in the world, but we are, I think, one of the countries that does have to look very hard at not just the course of the virus, but what can be done to support people and viable employers through the recovery of what's likely to be a very uneven recovery, because it depends on a lot of things like vaccines and care.
You mentioned recovery a couple of times last week, Professor, when the Prime Minister said some weeks, even months ago now, that he was ready to fire up the turbochargers and power or boost the British economy, the whole GDP picture back to one of health. How realistic a goal is that?
It's a worthy goal, but it is hard. But you absolutely have to aim for support through the pandemic. So in the autumn we'll have not just the budget, but also the spending review, and that will give a sense as to how much and what kind of support they can give. And the thing I would say is, remember, Nick, we had the government will be able to do more. Now, like I said, the debate will be over what's appropriate, but I think the principle has to be an ambitious way of helping people work from home if they can, support viable businesses, and support people who are affected by this uncertainty, because we're probably going to have to live with the virus for some time.
Grateful for your time, Professor, as ever. Thank you. Linda, you're fellow in economics at St Edmund Hall at Oxford University and a professor of economics at London Business School. Thank you for your input. Now, this, of course, might have affected you in the last few weeks, or you could still be on furlough and be desperately, desperately nervous about your employment situation. Do give me a call and take your personal stories on that. Meanwhile, in other news, the government resigns. No, calm down, not this one. We go to Lebanon.
We tried to bring about the change that the Lebanese people wanted. This is the reason we have tendered our resignation. Long live Lebanon.
In other world news, shooting at the White House. We'll give you more details on that. And here in the UK, you remember it was going to be a world-beating track and trace system.
If you test positive, NHS Test and Trace will contact you to trace people you might have infected.
No. Now the traces will be scaled back, and instead council staff will come and knock on your door. We'll give you more details of that later in the hour. 7:16 LBC News headlines. Holly Harris.
Pupils in Scotland are the first in the UK to return to school. A phased reopening is starting across the country today. The number of UK workers on payrolls fell by 730,000 between March and July, as another 81,000 jobs were lost last month. British and French immigration officials are meeting today to discuss the increasing number of migrants attempting to cross the Channel. The weather, thunderstorms, which will be heaviest in northern Scotland, and staying hot with a high of 34 Celsius.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. In Streatham, there's been an accident on the South Circular Road. It's westbound at Streatham Hill, and one lane is closed. It's very slow on the approach. In Walthamstow, Forest Road stays closed in both directions, and that's because of a burst water main. In Fulham, Peterborough Road is closed in both directions, and that's because of an ongoing investigation. On the M25, clockwise, very busy at Junction 5 at the M26, and then on to the Claggett Lane services, and that's because of the ongoing roadworks.
LBC.
And we're rolling. Discover the rich taste of Galbanio mozzarella.
It's Galbani. Try again.
Italians swear by Galbani's fresh, authentic.
Galbani. Once more.
Whether it's pasta for one or pizza for the whole family. Galabani.
Galbani.
Galabani.
Galbani.
Galabanani.
Galbani.
Galbania.
Galbani. For proper Italian mozzarella, it's got to be Galbani.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
Welcome to Look Forward, your guide to a better you. This week, envy. Imagine your neighbor has a brand new SUV. It's a Tucson N-Line from Hyundai. A 48-volt hybrid with 0% finance over 3 years and no monthly payments for 3 months. Can you feel the envy? Now, breathe in and out. And oh, who are we kidding? With an offer like this on all Tucsons, what's stopping you?
It's time to look forward with Hyundai. Search online for enlightenment. Offer available until 30th of September. Minimum £1,000 deposit. T's and C's apply. Guarantee may be required. Hyundai Finance. RH2 9AQ.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Steph. She's a bus driver.
Now that people are using public transport again, we really need to make sure that we keep each other safe. Passengers need to stay 2 metres apart. If that's not possible, make it at least 1 metre. I want to see everyone wearing face coverings over their mouth and nose unless you've got a good reason not to. And when you get to where you're going, you need to wash your hands. We've still got to play our part.
Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Are you getting a train over the bank holiday weekend? If so, here's some important news from us at Network Rail. There are engineering works planned in many parts of the country from the 29th to the 31st of August. To find out if your journey will be affected, please check before you travel at nationalrail.co.uk/August. Okay kids, first day back at school, have we got this? Let's see. Kickers on? Check. Rucksacks filled? Check. New coats looking super smart? Check. Smile on Dan's face? Check. Smile on Ellie's face? Check. Huge smile on Mum's face? Oh, yes!